Good afternoon. My name is Johnny Walton. I'm one of the instructors at Martin Community College in their startup lineman program that was so gracefully started by, help funded by Golden. As you can probably see somewhere along the video, we had some equipment that was donated. Edgecombe Martin EMC donated us a truck. River City Construction sold us a bucket truck at a very reduced cost. And Dominion has donated a lot of the material that we are using at the present day just because we didn't have anything. This is one of several startup programs in the state. The other instructor is Steve Johnson. He's a retiree from Dominion. I done my tenure at the town of Wilson. And what you see in the background is the guys are building a three-phase line. We start out in the program with introductory climbing and work our way up. Material installation on the poles. We build a single-phase line, and then we build a three-phase line. Today, if the video runs long enough, we're going to install a transformer and triplex like we would if you were feeding your house. What you're looking at right now is the guys are framing up the introductory pole, which would be the dead end pole. Of course, none of the wires that we have are energized, but it's basically for practice. The material that's used today varies probably a little bit from where it first started way back in I think the first poles were put up in the 1800s, but the application has stayed the same. You got one guy at the pole that's pulling up the three phases, and then the guy on the bottom of the pole is working out the neutral. I think this is our 6th or 7th week in the program. Some of the guys are doing better than others, but that's just with any job you have. But the application for employment is tremendous. The last batch that we had, which was like 6 or 7 guys, they were hired over the phone. No application, no interview, because the industry is so starved for help. I think Steve and myself's track record, we're like 89% maybe of our students have gotten jobs that have went through the program. Now, not all of them may have kept them, but they have gotten them. It doesn't really matter where you go in the United States of America. The application for the installation or the reinstallation due to storm damage of power does not change. It's pretty much the same. Material's a little different. How they use it may be a little different, but the application is always the same. The average person does not have any clue what it takes for the light to come on in their house once they walk in the door and flip the switch. There's just a tremendous amount of infrastructure that has to be up and running for that to happen. If you don't believe me, you can ask the folks down in Florida. If you're a high school student and you're looking at trying to get into this profession, the number one thing that you're going to be asked is, can you get your CDL driver's license? And that is every person that's come through this program is told that you're going to have to get them before you get your job. Some of them has gotten jobs with the promise that I'm going to get my license, but you have a grace period. If you don't get them between the day you're hired and your grace period, you are cut loose. But you got to have your CDLs. As you can see at the pole, I'm not poking fun of my man up there. He's kind of a hefty fella. That does not have any effect on some of the best linemen I know are big guys. And there are some women linemen, because the application and the tools have made it so much easier. You don't have to be a bodybuilder. All you have to be able to do is follow instructions and do the work.
It looks like it takes a lot of teamwork. Can you talk about that?
It does. What I just said, you have to follow instructions. My philosophy is, if you always do what you're told, how you're told, it's never your fault if it hits the fan. But you have to work together. The man at the pole has to tell the people on the ground exactly what he's needing and when he needs it. But on the other hand, a good groundman, if he's worked long enough, he can look at the pole and tell what that lineman needs before he needs it and have it already on hand. That speeds things up a lot. It used to be that speed counted. They were sacrificing speed for safety. But now it's safety oriented. It doesn't really matter how long it takes you up to a point, as long as you do it safely. Because all that complacency will get you killed. You can get by with something 10 times and nothing happen. That 11th time, it could be a major accident or a fatality. And there is statistics that can be looked up on the internet about that. But linemen fall in the top 5 most dangerous jobs in the country. But the biggest thing is, if you're scared of heights, it's not for you. But if you get over the fact that you cannot fall more than 2 feet, if you get past that, there's really nothing to it. It's just repetition. How you put it up today, you're going to put it up the same way tomorrow. We have 5 poles on this line. This would conceivably be 2 or 3 miles of line, but you would do the exact same thing. Most of the material we're using, like I say, has been donated. The overhead stuff was donated by Dominion. They've been really gracious. They told Steve that provided they could get it, if he needed something, he could go pick it up. If it was a hard to get item, it might be a little more to it. The underground installation over there, the transformers were purchased from the city of Wilson for $1. And the school had to pay a small fee to get them serviced. That means they just drained the oil out of them, because the college is not set up for an oil spill. But they paid a small fee to have them serviced and painted, and they were purchased from Wilson for $1. Every place you go, every town, every company, every municipality is all suffering from the exact same problem. Qualified people that's willing to stay. Most of the young boys are following the money. And the money is out there to be had. It's going to take several years for the industry, employee-wise, to get caught up to the demand. What they done on the first 3 poles, they're going to do on the last 2. Everything will be the same. The guys will tell you that the hardest thing for them to learn is the terminology. There's always a slang term for practically everything you do. Like a guy plate is called a goat head.
What is a guy plate?
It's where the guy is attached, the down guy to hold the pole up is attached to the pole. The top one's got a guy plate. The bottom one is a guy hook. But in the industry, they call it a goat head.
Is there math and science that they have to learn in all of this?
Yes and no. Some of the classes that you take, the more advanced class, Nash is an example. They go a little more in depth into the math part of it. But on an introductory level, you're not going to be asked to do any engineering questions. You're not going to be asked to do any calculations. All that is done for you by somebody who's getting paid a lot more. All you have to do is install it just like you were told in a timely manner. I mean, it can't get any simpler than that. If you put it up today one way, you're going to put it up tomorrow. And that's where we're having problems. There's a lot of students that have come through that has not completed the course that just simply are not mechanically inclined. And we hate to point the finger at it out, but you can't back somebody if they can't do the work.
What is the hardest thing? You said the terminology, but as far as
we're doing it right. We're doing it right now. We're doing it right now in the classroom. There is a color for every connector for every size wire: pink, yellow, blue, orange. You have to know that color for that size wire. And I didn't know it at years ago. There's actually a bird name for every size wire. 795 is a hawk, a raven, or a buzzard or something. But I don't know why that is. Just some smart guy said we're just going to call it all bird names. But the wire size, to be able to look up at that wire and say, okay, that's 1/0 wire. That's the hardest thing they're having to learn right now. I mean, it's not that complicated, but just so much of it. The fact that the smaller the number, the bigger the wire. Like number 2 is the biggest single conductor wire. Number 8 is actually smaller. And that's just the way it's always been. They're having a hard time for that. But that's the one thing that is generic no matter where you go. Those colors are anywhere in the United States of America. Those colors on them connectors don't change. So the guy right here, Nick, he's rigging a Jeep. It's a secondary spool, but the common name for it is a Jeep. Don't ask me why. It's just a Jeep for holding the neutral up.
And so when you've got a guy up there, you've always got at least one guy on the ground.
Right. That's a very good observation. Dominion servicemen can go out by themselves. If their job is a little too labor intensive, they can ask for help. If you work for a municipality, you will never go out by yourself. You always have a helper with you. Same thing with the co-ops, I think. If one of them, you never go out by yourself. But it's just an infinite number of wire sizes, the colors on the connectors, the connectors itself that you squeeze on, they have a number on the box that corresponds with the size wire that they fit. So you have to know, you don't really have to know it, but if the man calls for one and you send him up the wrong one 3 times in a row, he's going to get kind of ticked.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll be like me. I throw it back down and say, get me what I asked for. Because unlike Nick right there, I want to get the work done and get down as soon as possible. Because nobody wants to stay up there forever. I don't know if anybody enjoys it that good.
So is he attaching it to something that's already up there?
There's a clevis on the back side. If you look at the next pole down, there's a clevis with a spool. The wire passes between the spool and the pole. And then once it's brought up tight, it's tied in. You see, these are what I would call long arm construction. If you going down the road, you'll see short arm construction. The 3 phases on like a 3-foot arm. Some of them are pole pins, where the 2 phases on one side, 1 phase on the opposite side of the pole, and then the ground neutral down. And it's just preference to whoever system you're on. But the math there's very little math. You just have to know what works and what don't work. And we're having a hard time with some of the students just remembering what's written on the board. And I'm sure most of the teachers can convey that same sympathy. If you write it down, and all you have to do is either copy it down, or nowadays just take a picture of it and you'd have it. But somehow that does not translate down to some of the students all the time. Dominion system is pretty big. It goes up Virginia, you know. They have a contractor, Lee Construction. Lee Construction is paying their linemen more than Dominion's paying their linemen to work on the same system.
Wow.
Their top lineman is $55 an hour for a top lineman.
What about starting out? What can these guys do?
It's going to depend on several things. Your CDLs. If you got a CDL license, you're a shoe-in. If you didn't have any arms or any legs, if you got a CDL license, they'll hire you, because there's not that. With the new law in February, that has handicapped every industry in the United States. You can't just study up and go get your CDLs. You have to go to a state-certified school for up to 11 weeks at a cost of, could be up to $4,000 just to get your CDLs. So I would encourage anybody that's coming out to go on and get your CDLs, do whatever it takes, and you're a shoe-in for a job. We got good linemen that don't have CDLs. So they got to have somebody to drive the truck.
Gotcha.
We had a little fellow in our last class. He was by far not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but when he started class, he had got his CDLs right out of high school. I said, boy, you can get a job, just drive the truck. No matter if you can do anything. The new law in February has really put a damper on the industry, because you want to hire a person, but then you got to turn right around and send him back to school for 11 more weeks. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But
you want to move down some?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about some of this equipment that's
Can. As you can see, we've had several donations. Most of the transformers, or the gray items you see, were donated by Dominion. The insulators, the overhead wire, the black wire with the red stripe is actually underground primary. We usually do that the last couple of weeks of class. But like I say, everything here has been donated. It's the underground wire. A splice is about $45, and if the wire costs $1.50 a foot, it's just not cost effective to spend $40 to splice on 30 feet of wire. So they're able to give us what they don't want to use. A lot of companies gone to the fiberglass cross arms as opposed to having the wood arms, just because they're lighter. They're actually as strong as the wood, but just a whole lot easier to handle.
Did you talk about that bucket truck?
Yeah, that's the bucket truck that was purchased from River City Construction here in Little Washington. I think, I'm just guessing, that it would not pass dielectric. Once they get a certain age on, they're tested every year, and they sold it to the college at a very reduced rate. One, as a contribution to the program, and two, it was just not cost effective to bring it up to code. But the school really did appreciate it, because we did not have one. And trucks are at a premium right now because of the chip crisis.
Y'all practicing the bucket truck?
Yes.
Going up in the...
Well, with the time restraint of number of weeks, there's just, you never get enough practice in one. So what we do is we practice rescuing the dummy for hurt man rescue. We practice bucket rescue, and then later on next week we're going to practice changing the transformer out of the truck. We practiced it with blocks and tackle this week, and matter of fact, they're going to hang this one with blocks, because you can't get a truck to every pole. But you never get enough practice. There's a preconceived notion by some that if I get a job, I'm going to get a bucket and I won't have to climb. But you might get in the bucket to clean the trash out of it, but you're not going to get in to operate it. One of our former students came in the other day to pay us a visit. He said he was actually in the bucket, but he had somebody driving, and that guy was supervising his hot work. It was a training, and that's basically the way it's going to work.
When they come out of your program and they go into a job, is there some on-the-job training they're also going
It depends on where you go. If you get hired, the Dominion has its own training program, and it lasts for several years. Most of your contractors, it's like on-the-job training. Now, Steve and myself are going to, once we leave the college here, we're going to River City. They're starting up their own safety and training program to help facilitate that, because there's just so much work and not enough qualified people to oversee it. Wilson had a lineman career development program, and once you completed all the tasks and the hours of classroom and in the field, you got your journeyman card. So I'll register with the state of North Carolina as a certified journeyman lineman. That won't get you any discounts anywhere, but it's a matter of pride, really.
Yeah. Says you know your stuff, right?
Well, you never know all of it, and that's the thing. And we've tried to tell these guys, just because you can do a task one time does not mean you are an expert at it. And it's just Steve and myself, 2 classes, we saw a guy on a video. We watched a lot of videos. There's a fellow up in Canada. It's called Bob Decline. He's super good. He's a young lineman, and he puts these little videos out about how things work, and he's real informative, and it's not over your head. And he showed us how to take a wedge grip off, and I had never seen. I just cut them off with the bolt cutters, or leave them on there. And he showed us how to take them off. I'd never seen that in my 36 years.
Yeah, always learning new stuff.
And that's the biggest thing that most of the young people need to realize, that there's always something to learn. And once you learn it, you need to try to remember it. Just like the guy at the pole race, he's in gloves and sleeves. Even though this is a de-energized line, in the past, you could climb up to the main line neutral and then put your gloves and sleeves on. Now, when you leave the ground, you got to have them on till you get all the way down. There's no exceptions.
How long does the program here at Martin last?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that question. We started in August. No. Let's see, August. Oh my God. Steve, how many weeks is our program? How many weeks is our program? Yes, 16. I was going to say 15.
And what are the requirements for somebody to do it? Do they have to have a high school diploma? Do they need?
You have to be 18 by the end of class.
Okay.
The gentleman at the pole down there on the end, he's got his back to us. He's 19, and it's just everything's natural for him from day one.
Yeah.
I told Kobe, was the other gentleman that come up, he was going to get his CDL physical. I told him yesterday he would get my vote for most improved climber, because it's not a natural act. I mean, it's really not. But you got to get past the fact that you cannot fall. Before the fall arrest system was put in place, you would free climb up the pole.
Oh, wow.
And if you cut out, you fell all the way to the ground. And then I got to be a foreman when the fall arrest system was put in place. I put my butt squeeze on my belt, and I showed it I had it on there, and I hung it back in the bin. I didn't have to climb with it. But now everybody has to climb with it, no matter how much experience you got. You have to climb with a butt squeeze. There's a startup program that's going to start up in Beaufort. There's one that just started in Kenansville at, what is that, James Brunt. They've just started. Matter of fact, we actually loaned them some climbing gear because theirs had not come in when class started.
Oh, wow.
To get them, get them underway.
Should we go around the classroom?
You can. The gentleman on the back of the pole, he's a ex-Marine. He's done 15 or 16 years in Marine Corps. He's an instructor, super nice guy. There's a big difference between somebody who's been in service and somebody right out of high school.
Oh, sure.
He just wants to get a job. His wife's a nurse, and he's trying to get, he likes to work. He thinks he'll be good at it, and he is. But he's trying to get in a situation where he don't have to move around with his kids. But this right here is a dead end pole. That means the wire just stops. It doesn't go any further.
Is that why they're adding the...
They're adding the three-phase up and attached to that, and then the down guys go to hold the pole. If this was not a dead end pole, it would just continue on for miles. Nick. He's pulling those cross arm braces down. That's going to keep the cross arm level. If this was a new pole, you would have to drill all those holes, but we drilled them the first time, and we just use everything over again. So that's why everything works back so easy. I'm quite sure that this video will be viewed by linemen at different areas, and they'll wonder, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? If I was here, I would do this different. And you're going to get that pretty much anywhere you go. Most of the material, as I said, was donated by Dominion, so we're building this line back to Dominion specs. If you're with a municipality, even more so. What we try to get the guys to think about is, why is the lights off, and what's it going to take to get them back on? If these guys were able to use a bucket, this will move along a whole lot faster. But like I said, you cannot get a bucket to every pole. Or even if you could, you might not have enough buckets to get around to everybody.
Go ahead with that other
we're making the guys use the double arms on this dead end pole. We probably could get by with using one fiberglass arm, but we make them do it the hard way first, and then we let them do it the easy way. We've had a few students in the past that will get hired before class ever finishes. And we encourage them, you know, not let the end of class prohibit them from getting a job. We've had a couple that will get hired upon completion of the class. So some companies want them to complete it. Some really don't care. We just need the help. Two of the students here now, one of them is up the pole now. They have interviews with Dominion within 2 weeks. If you don't mind working out in the weather, rain or shine, snow or cold, it's very lucrative as far as the money, as long as you can put up with, one, who you're working with, and two, what you're working on. But you can go anywhere in the country and get a job. We got one student here that's applied for Oklahoma. There's an opening for a helicopter lineman, a helicopter groundman, and they have an apprenticeship to train him to do helicopter work. There's tons of other aspects of line work that don't have anything to do with climbing poles or dealing with hot wire. There's substation work. There's metering. The municipality that I work for, they actually hired a guy to fly the drone so they could inspect lines without having to walk them all out. So he went and got certified to FAA to fly his drone. So there's just tons of applications out there, and there's fiber also. I think one of the gentlemen with Dominion said they have a fiber group that's coming on. So they're going to have fiber linemen for their communications. I know this is probably getting kind of a little bit monotonous and repetition, but this is the same application we go anywhere in the United States of America. On a 3-phase line, it could be a V line, it could be a single-phase line. They're going to pull the triplex from over here, hit this pole, and they're going to hang a transformer to this pole to get the lights on. That's not going to change no matter where you go. Like I said, it's a good job. If you don't mind working with who you're with and working in the elements, there is a job opening out there for practically everybody who wants one. So if there's any interest, all you have to do is make some calls. Nobody's going to come to your house and knock on your door and say, hey, do you want a job? You're going to have to get out there and beat the bushes.
Thank you so much, and thanks to your team for sharing this.
Well, anytime, anytime.